Hey, we're here with Robbie Crager, who is a business partner of mine in Puerto Rico, who is actually going to make a missions trip to the Ukraine. And I wanted to record this in case anybody out there looking to donate to this cause. So I wanted to get some details around it. So Robbie, why don't you let us know, how did this come about? and where are you going and what are you doing?
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you guys for taking the time to talk to me, and I'll tell you briefly our story. I'm on the board of directors of a group called Eurasia Partners, and we support church planting movements in Eastern Europe, Russia, and Asia. So this region is a place where for the past decade we have supported indigenous people. So in each country, pastors who are in the country that want to plant churches, we come alongside of them and try to facilitate those things. So I've been on 4 mission trips up to this point. I've been in Albania a few times, and we took a group of pastors to Israel right before COVID. On that trip in Israel, I had dinner with a Russian pastor who plants a bunch of churches, and I was talking to a guy from Ukraine who also is a church planting guy, and we had this dinner and we talked about this war. This is, going back some time. It was a very interesting dinner, anyways, to say the least. Everybody was friendly, but even back then, there was this sense that Russia was going to come into Ukraine eventually, right? They had already gone in and taken Crimea. I think it's Crimea that they first took, like back in 2015 or 16. So we kind of had that discussion. And then what happened more recently was right before this war, Rick Amos, who is the founder of Eurasia Partners, called up, and we were talking about these 6 pastors who were in Ukraine and in and around Odessa and Lviv and I'm sorry, I don't know the other towns, but these other towns that are heavily involved in this conflict. And so we started to think and pray about how we could get people out of the country, and thought we would first get these pastors and their families to safety. Well, we had that discussion for about 2 days, 3 days. And during that time, each of these 6 pastors individually came back to us and said, listen, we appreciate it, but we're going to stay and we're going to minister to people that are going to need it. And that's exactly what they've done. And
that's pretty remarkable in itself.
It's really remarkable. And as I prepare for the trip, I've been fortunate enough to speak with a few pastors, and I'll kind of run down our trip itinerary, which is evolving. And each time we speak to someone in an area, it's kind of inspiring and heartbreaking all at one time, to hear these stories of how God's moving, how God is using these churches, these small churches that are in areas where they can help to either supply food and medicine and clothing and shelter and in many cases bring people out of the country. So
okay.
So that is how it started. And at some point I had this feeling like I was being called to go. We started to raise money for these efforts, and Eurasia Partners raised quite a bit of money through some local churches in Florida where I'm from, and my home church, Discovery Church, has been very generous, and several people have been very generous. And so to go over and see it and kind of get a feel for what's happening on the ground and see where we can be effective in helping, come alongside people who are just in dire straits, right? So I've, in anticipation of going, I've been having conversations with these pastors that I'll meet along the way. And like yesterday, I spoke to a guy named Taras. He's a church planting leader from Belarus, and he's actually a refugee in Poland. He's now in Warsaw, and he's planted a church in Warsaw because he can't go back to Belarus. He had to leave after this latest election. So this is prior to this war. But he's now there, and he's ministering to refugees from Ukraine. helping to give them shelter when they come across the border in Warsaw, and then find them permanent places, whether that's other places in Europe or Poland, or even getting them to the US. So he had an amazing story. Part of his story is that he's going to be planning a church around the time that we're going to be there. So it's amazing to see how God can take a guy, and he's planning churches in Belarus right before COVID. They have this election. He gets run out of town, basically. He said that if he goes back, he'll be imprisoned for decades, he believes. And so he's just trying to get his life together, and then this war breaks out, and I mean, you can tell he's exhausted. He's just doing, and he's opened up his house. He's opened up his church as a refugee center. And he has been very gracious to agree to pick my team up. We're going to buy a van when we land, and he's going to take us around and show us the shelters. So Poland has been extremely generous with refugees, and we're going to get to see what's going on there, and spend some time with Taras, who I've known before. He's been in Florida, and I've been on trips with him. So that'll be nice to reconnect with him. And then we'll move from Warsaw down to is it Lutz? Sorry, I'm going to look at my schedule here. Sorry, I can't remember. All of the names sort of run together for me. Yeah, so we'll go from Warsaw and cross the border to go into Lutsk, Ukraine, and we'll meet a pastor there who's doing the same thing, only he's on the ground, and he's providing shelter, he's providing clothing and medicine and all of this stuff in Lutsk. And then we'll spend a few days in Lutsk. We'll then travel from Lutsk to Lviv, which I just met this man, Pavlo, a few days ago in anticipation of this trip, and his story is amazing. His small church of like 50 people prior to the war, like 40 of them left. They fled the country, and now his church has like 100 people there, 100 members from the area that are, the church has grown in this time, and they've been able to serve almost 1,000 people that are fleeing other parts of Ukraine and coming for shelter in Lviv, and then moving on to either, again, other places in Lviv where it's more permanent or out of the country. And so they had a need for a van, and he just kind of mentioned that they had this need for a van. And so in planning the trip, I thought, well, maybe we could bless them with a van. And so we started praying about that. And so that's become our prayer and our hope, and I believe that we're going to get there. We originally thought we would raise like 25 or 30 grand, and we have like 6 stops. So if we gave $3,000 to $5,000 at each stop to help with the need, that would be that 25 or 30 grand. And then we heard about this van that's a need, and this pastor in Lviv is spending like $5,000 a week to shelter these people, and so there's just an amazing amount of need. And I haven't even talked to everybody that we're going to meet yet, right? So every time I do, it's heartbreaking and inspiring all in the same time. I think as Christians, we don't experience the kind of hardship that many times people in other parts of the world do. And I think even other Christians in other part of the world that are experiencing hardship don't experience this kind of hardship, right? Like, so this is not something that you expect to have happen in 2022 and have this kind of war break out senselessly. So yeah, so that's how our trip has evolved. I got a couple of kind of taps on the shoulder that I felt like were God saying, hey, Robert, I think your skill set would be good there. And then I was having lunch with a mentor of mine in Orlando, Florida recently, and he turns to me in the middle of lunch and says, Robert, if you thought of going to Ukraine, I think your skill set would work really well there. And it was just like double assurance, like, wow, okay, God. I try to say yes to God. When he knocks twice, I almost always will say yes, right? So, I took that as like, okay, I was thinking about this. I thought God was putting something on my heart. And then I got this sort of unsolicited second, sort of tap on the shoulder, like, hey,
Yeah.
why don't you do this? And we've prayed about it, Linda and I, and we have a couple of different plans for whether it's safe to go to places like Lviv or Lutsk, and a plan A and a plan B. And plan A is we're going to go in to Ukraine, and I believe that's what's going to happen, and we really want, that's what our hope is. If it can't, then we'll kind of travel the outskirts and see what's going on as people leave. And Eurasia Partners has a 300 church planners over in the region, so there's a pretty wide network. And one of the cool things that came of this was those 6 pastors, because some of them had been with us in a best practices church planning movement seminar or webinar that but not a webinar, it was live, it was in Israel, that we put on. They reached out to pastors in places like Poland and places like Moldova, and they connected with each other, and they have set up their own network where they're able to buy supplies one place and bring them in. So back to this van, because I think it's become a major part of our mission. This pastor Pablo in Lviv has a van, and he uses it to take people into Poland, get supplies, then take the supplies back to his place, and then to other ministries around the country, and even into the front lines. And
Wow.
so he just kind of casually said, hey, we've got this van and a couple of other cars, but a couple of cars are broken down. We could use a second van. I don't shy away from doing big things. So immediately I was like, well, Rick, we should start praying about this van, right? We need to get this guy a van. And so that has become something that we're trying to push hard so that we can go over there, which means we probably need to raise 50 or 60 grand instead of our initial 25.
Right. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So I know that Rick Amos with Eurasia is, involved because, he's been so heavily involved in the region and promoting Christ followers in that region. If people want to donate, where would they go to donate, and how would they help support this?
Yeah, so we have a couple of different ways that they can do that. I can send you a link for Eurasia Partners, and it will have a number on there that's for this trip. And I also have we have a secular arm of Eurasia Partners, which is called Global Focus. So if there's anybody out there that wants to donate through some kind of corporate matching, and corporations don't necessarily want to do faith-based stuff, they could give in this other way, and that would be amazing. So I'll send you both links. It's the same mission trip. We've just got a couple of ways to raise the money. Yeah.
Right. Who all is going on this trip? Is it you and your wife, or is?
Yeah. So it's not my wife. She and I talked about it, and we just didn't feel like it would be necessarily the safest thing in the world. This isn't the safest mission trip that I will have ever been on.
Right.
In fact, I've never been called to do anything like this before. I don't know how dangerous it is, but anyways, it's myself and 3 other men. Zachary Postel, Catherine's son.
Mm-hmm.
He is going to come with us. My good friend Drew Schaffner, who I do a lot of real estate with. He's actually one of my son's best friends from high school, and we've kind of mentored him. And anyway, I've done dozens of real estate deals with Drew, and Drew's going to come. And the last one is Adon. Adon is our cameraman. And Adon helps me with my
YouTube footage while you're there.
Yeah, and so that's a big part of our trip as well. So the 3 things, we're going to take supplies and try and help as much as we can with money and supplies and medicine and that kind of stuff. We want to just show up and show love, and let people know that there are people from outside of this that are with them and thinking of them and love them, and so that's a second part of why we're going. And then the third part is we're going to bring a camera, and we hope that we will be able to get the stories of these pastors and volunteers and these refugees, right? So anyone who wishes to speak to us and wants to kind of give a voice to what's going on, we will have, the 4 of us will all have a camera, and we will try and allow as many people as we can to have a voice and tell their story. I think it's very important to get those stories. I think that unfortunately we get a very small piece of what is going on over there, and that piece that we get is decided by the politicians and the media, who you just can't always trust what they're saying. You can't ever trust what they're saying. Sorry, I don't mean to get political, but to give a voice is going to be important. So we've set up a YouTube channel for that called Stories from Ukraine, or Stories of Ukraine, and we'll post things like this call if you share it with me, and we'll kind of document everything we're doing along the way. But mainly that channel will be to grab these stories and to put them out there. And so I hope to be uploading kind of a lot of stuff as we go on this trip, so as often as we can, we'll pop in little 1 minute or 2 minute snippets, and along the way we'll be trying to gather as many stories as we can and get them out there. In the short time that I've been trying to set this up to go, every time I meet someone new who we're going to find, they've got a new story and a new need. And so I just want to, in any way that I can benefit them, we will really try not to be a burden on anybody. And we want to kind of bring love and support. And obviously
tell people's stories at the same time, give them a voice.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me ask you, what dates are heading out, and when you're coming back? And
sure. Yeah, we leave on Saturday night, June 25th, and we come back. We have a really early flight to catch July 11th, and so we fly into Warsaw, and we'll travel through Warsaw into Ukraine, and then out through Romania and into Moldova, and then back into Romania, and fly out of Romania to come home. So our last stop is Bucharest, Romania, and we'll be home. So.
And you're looking to pick up buy a van when you're in Warsaw?
I hope that we'll buy the van before I get to Warsaw. So I don't really want to go van shopping, and I think that there's a van we've identified that we think we could buy now. We're hoping to raise the money for that and buy that as early as possible, so that I don't want that to become a distraction, right? Like we're going to get that done. And it's a trip. We're going to leave it with the guy in Lviv, and I think God's going to use it to do great things. So.
And are you bringing supplies from America all the way, or you're sending them over separately, or just going to buy supplies there?
Oh, we're going to do all of that. Because we now have the van, we're able to travel heavy. When we first started, we thought we'll just travel with a backpack and travel light, and we wouldn't have been able to bring much in the way of supplies. But we've had several people who have been very generous about, offering to send clothing and medications and, just some kind of things. So we'll probably travel pretty heavily, and then try to leave that stuff along the way, and we'll come back light. So we'll go heavy with a couple bags each, and we'll come back with, the clothes on our back.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions, Rick?
You're saying like one of the main cities, Lviv, is that what used to be called Lvov?
I may be saying it wrong. It's Lviv. So yes, I think it's the same. I've heard Lvov, I've heard Lviv. I'm not sure how they say it there. Lviv has been bombed a few times, but has been mostly left alone. So we're praying that will continue to be the case, and that it'll be safe to go there. Lutsk has not been bombed at this point, and so we feel like it's certainly safe to go into that portion. And so and we're probably like 2 or 3 days in several different stops, and we're really working through that. So like yesterday when we connected with Taras in Warsaw, we were just going to fly in Warsaw and then drive to border right away. But we're going to spend some time in Warsaw because he's got a lot going on there, and we want to see what he's got going on. Look at this
Gotcha.
trip doing so. And you know, every time we speak to someone, we sort of shift what the idea is of the trip. This is God's trip, not mine. So whatever God wants us to do, I really hope and I pray that I'll be able to say yes. And, so I just pray God gives us the courage and keeps us safe.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions, Rick?
I think that's it for me.
Well, then, you know, I just want to say to anybody who's watching this video that, you know, I'm going to be passing the links out so that we can support this trip as much as we can. And if you, in the very least, you know, could say prayers over the people that are going on this trip, over Eurasia partners, over the people of Ukraine, you know, we've been saying prayers for them all the time so that, you know, you guys can go and come back safely. You know, so yeah, thank you, Robbie, for answering the call, by the way. Thank you so much. And
thank you for taking the time to listen. And I appreciate you putting it out there, Deborah. That's very generous.
Absolutely.
Anybody who's watching, just encourage you, please pray for the people of Ukraine and this small group of guys that is going, and partner with us if you can. And we'll try to update on this site, Voices from Ukraine, I think it's called. I'll share that link with you as well, Kat.
Yeah, I'll get it going. All right, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.